Alright, y'all, good morning. Boy Richie Romance, it's about 5 in the morning. I have no fucking, so aside from having no friends and no life, I also don't apparently have a body clock, and I can't fucking control when I'm waking up and sleeping and shit. But anyway, today is, I'm going to film very early in the morning, get this knocked out of the way. It's on my mind, it's in my mind, I'm pregnant, I'm giving birth to this freaking video shoot, and it is on the Trojan War. Yesterday we covered the Hittites, and today we are going to cover the Sea Peoples. That's my next piece of information on this show. If you are watching this on Facebook, please go to YouTube, look up The World According to Romance, subscribe, comment, like, yeah. Alright, yeah, it's pretty dark in here, and I apologize about that. I really don't feel like turning on all the lights. It's so goddamn early in the morning. I'm not awake yet, but I'm still going to bring you a show. Alright, so the Sea Peoples. Now, we're talking about the collapse of the Bronze Age, and that has to do with the Trojan War, because the Trojan War it's not about, the story itself is not about the Bronze Age collapsing, but that is when it collapses. We know when the Trojan War happened, and we know when Troy fell. We have archaeological evidence, so we know that the Bronze Age fell right around 1200 BC. That is when the Trojan War happened. But an agent of this all happening, and the major agent of it collapsing, as far as we can tell through history, we only have there's two times these people get mentioned ever. Well, actually 2.5, and I'm going to get into all of them today on this show. The first is it's in 1207 BC. The pharaoh Merneptah, Merneptah, wrote an inscription on a wall of a temple near Deir el Medina, which is right across the river from the Valley of the Kings, where all the pharaohs are buried of the New Kingdom. And he wrote on this temple's wall, somewhere, I think it was the Temple of Luxor, just a few lines of hieroglyph that said, the foreigners. I didn't write down the quotes one for one, word for word, but it says something along the lines of, the foreigners conspired in their islands to attack us. We defended our lands against them. And he starts naming all these places where they're from, and there are these weird names. I wrote some of them down. Now, some of them we have no clue what the hell they are, but I wrote down a couple that we have ideas, that historians have ideas where they're from. Now, the first one is, he says, the Shekelesh, the Shardana, the Luxa, the Pelasgars, the Danae. Now, alright, they all came in boats. They were the peoples of the sea peoples. So there is the name that we're talking about today. These sea peoples, these raiders, these massive fleets of ships were just showing up and fucking up everything in the Bronze Age. They went to Greece, they went to Turkey, they went to the Middle East, and they went to Egypt. But the Egyptians were the only ones who wrote about it and mentioned it. Like, history doesn't say anything, and as quickly as they come, they almost disappear as fast. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So the Shekelesh. Now, if you know anything about Egyptian writing or any of the Near East writing, Hebrew, I think Arabic's the same way. Their vowels are they're not there. They're just assumed, the vowels, okay? You have to put them in yourself. It's all consonants when they write, okay? So the Shekelesh, let's look at that. S, C, or K, L, that could be Sicily, all right? Shardania, that sounds a lot like Sardinia. Luxa, there's a place on the southwest edge of Turkey called Lixa. Like the Pelasgars are almost definitely the Pelasgians. All right, that's another city. Pelasgia is a city off the coast of Turkey. we don't know who the hell these people are. Were they Dorians? Were they like big, huge Germanic people that came down and raided? We just can't tell, but they're described as big people. Now, again, with Egyptian writing, just so you understand, like, for instance, all right, the name Ramses, I know that one, okay? Like, basically, Egyptians wrote, just to get back to Egyptian writing, Egyptians wrote in, like, it's almost like if you took emojis, if you took the umbrella emoji, and that would suddenly meant, and you took the dog emoji, and that meant DG, and you put them together, it would be dig. That would be that word, but you'd have to put some vowels in there. Like, for instance, the sun, everybody knows the sun god in Egypt is Ra. So for the word Ramses, the first word is the sun. The first emoji is the sun. The second emoji is like a sheep or a ram for me, Ram, me, and then the the two S's on the end are two sheaves of wheat. So when you see Ramses' name, it's any pharaoh has the little oval around their name. It's called a cartouche. It's some kind of like holy thing, some religious thing they do. You'll see a picture of a sun for Ramses' name, a ram, and then two sheaves of wheat, and that means Ramses. Okay, that's somehow we know how to read. It took a long time to figure out how to do this shit, and it was hard, but we do know how to read hieroglyphs. And that's the best we can pull out of it is, these words, Shekelish, Shardina, and it sounds like other places. There's a lot of them that he said, and I didn't write them down, that history has no clue what the hell he's talking about. But anyway, so he basically says that we got attacked. Pharaoh Meneptah's inscription says we got attacked, and we repelled them. Now, 20 years later, in 1187 BC, the Pharaoh Ramses III also writes down on one of his temples pretty much the same thing, and he even says some of the same names. The Shekelish come back, the Sardinia come back. There's new people whose names never appeared before. The Luxia come back. And this time he says, I repel, he says, they've laid waste to everything, okay? Hattusa, which is the Hittites, has been laid waste. Canaan has been destroyed, he says. Gezer and Esgabalon, which are two cities on the coast of, like, Israel, walls have been destroyed, and their people have been carried off as slaves. And then Ramses says, Israel has been laid waste, and that was the first time. Ramses III is the first person ever in history to mention the word Israel. So there's that, and then he says, I settled these people in both my lands, the lands of Libya, and along the coast of Canaan. Again, we can't tell if these people were coming from the eastern edge of the Mediterranean and going west and attacking everyone, or if they came from the west and to the east and beat the shit. I think they came from the west and they beat the shit out of everyone in the east. Now, maybe they were, this whole floating flotilla of ships floating around beating the shit out. I mean, they were just renegade. They were not losing. They were kicking everyone's ass, whoever these people were. And maybe they were remnants of the Trojan War. Maybe they were, all these different tribes were different boatloads of heroes coming back from the Trojan War. We simply don't know, and we haven't figured it out yet. But definitely, 1187 BC is right around the time where what we now call Israel gets pretty much, people move in there, okay? Big, huge, foreign people that we think are in. The Bible seems to describe them as Indo-European. The Bible describes them as giants and calls them the Philistines. And then forever and anon, that territory is now called the Philistines. And we think it goes back to this Pelasgians, like somehow that name turned into Philistines. And that's who came there. They occupied it. They built 5 cities, and that they became the Philistines. Now, also Ramses gives us pictures of them. Okay, he didn't just write down text like Menerptah did. He actually wrote pictures, and they have There's either it's either their helmets or their hair is like spiky, which makes me think Celt, and I'm a Celtophile, and I identify as a Celt. We're gonna get into those shows in a little bit. I'm gonna do a series on the Celts, but I can't prove that they were actually Celts or Dorians or even Indian. Nobody can prove anything. Okay, but we do know that the Bible, and then, you know, David would have lived maybe 150 to 200 years after the fact. The Philistines would have been there for 200 years and been occupying Israel, and the Israelis and Jews hated it and fought back against them. That's the whole deal with the story of David and Goliath. The only person, the only Philistine whose name I think there might be some other Philistines named in the Bible, but the most famous, of course, is Goliath. David and Goliath. Somehow David, this little tiny Jewish guy with a sling and a rock, takes out a humongous, big ass brute. Yeah, that is one of these occupying people. That is the Philistines, aka the Sea Peoples. So, and that's a whole nother story in itself. I'm not getting into too much biblical stuff today, but the Bible does corroborate all this shit. So, that happened in 1187 BC. And again, the Danae. Now another word, and they said they have another word, the Danae and the Achaeans. Like, those are both words that, like, Greeks actually, the Mycenaeans Greeks never called themselves Greeks. Greek is a negative term that the Romans put onto the Greeks much later on. It's almost like when the Irish first came to America, they were called paddies, negatively. Like, imagine if we just started calling Ireland Paddy Land. Like, that's basically what happened to Greece. Like, the Romans would shit on the Greeks when they first formed, and that is what the name they got history threw on them. The Greeks did not call themselves Greeks. Latter Greeks in the Golden Age, which is much later, most of what you know from Greece happens between 600 and 300 BC. That's the Golden Age, and they called themselves Hellenists, and they all thought they were children of Helen of Troy. Well, the Mycenaeans, Helen was one of them, so they didn't call themselves Hellenists, they didn't call themselves Greeks, they called themselves Achaeans, and they called themselves Danans, and I could talk all day about this. Anyway, there's one other little bit of information that we have, proof that these Sea Peoples existed. In the Syrian city of Ugarit, there was like a client king writing to his boss, who was a higher king, and he's like, look, basically, send me troops, man. These ships are out there. They're gonna attack again. You gotta tell me if you see them, the ships out there on the sea. The Sea Peoples are coming back, and they're gonna sack us. And he wrote this on a clay tablet. Well, when you write a clay tablet, you have to fire it up in a kiln. Like, basically, you get done writing, and then you put your piece of paper into the oven to make it last forever. It's weird, but that's how clay tablets work. So we found this, okay? Archaeologists found this tablet, okay? It's in a museum somewhere, I don't know where, but from Ugarit, okay? They found the oven, the kiln, the clay tablet, all were destroyed. The city itself of Ugarit was destroyed by the Sea People. The message never got there, and they just left that little piece of information right where it was. And historians thousands of years later in the 1800s found it, and we have that now. So that's another reference to the Sea People. This guy, like, basically sending a message for help, and it never got out because the Sea People attacked. Again, we don't know who they are. There is we think they have much to do with the Trojan War, and they certainly have to do with the collapse of the Bronze Age. History only knows them as the Sea Peoples. They destroyed. Egypt didn't go down, okay, but it would never, after Ramses III, it would never ever come back to its former greatness. For the rest of Egyptian history, it was just a downward trend. They would eventually get it sacked by the Assyrians. Then the Nubians, the Black Pharaohs, the 25th dynasty. After that, they got sacked by the Persians, and then after the Persians, Alexander the Great came in. After Alexander the Great, there was 300 years of Ptolemies, and then the Romans took it. I mean, Egypt would just go from Ramses III. It was just a downhill battle, and there was during this time there was a lot of seismic activity. There was a lot of change going on in the environment. There was probably climate change, so that is what makes people move and pick up. And all the pictures that Ramses III gave us, there, aside from the spiky hair and all the armor that would seem to be like some sort of European armor, it looks like for the most part they were coming to settle. They weren't like there's pictures of wagons, there's pictures of women, wives, babies, like whoever these people were, they weren't coming just to attack and sack. They were coming to stay. So again, the only permanence that we have is the Philistines. To this day, where the Philistines live is called Palestine. It's a hotly contested region of the Middle East. The Arabs claim it as their own. The Jews always move in, and there's fighting and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, that's the story of the Sea Peoples. Tune in tomorrow we're going to get into the actual Trojan War. I'm probably going to get into Homer first. Homer is the writer of both the Iliad and the Odyssey, and we're going to get nitty-gritty into this Trojan War shit. But this was just a precursor. This was just warm-up show number 2 for my series on the Trojan War. Please enjoy and have a great day. It's dark in here. I apologize about it, and I apologize about my monotonous low-tone voice, but I have people sleeping and neighbors and crap here where I live at the Y. So everybody have a great day. My name's Richie. This is the World According to Romance. Please like me on YouTube and on Facebook. Comment. Show your boy some love. Have a good day. Peace.